Hi guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok, Covent Garden. It's Wok Wednesdays, and this week it's all about layering flavour in that wok. We're doing a pork lo mein, soaking, saucy noodles. So this type of dish, like any sort of Chinese dish, there's so many different ways of making it, but I quite like sort of the classic stir fry of sort of piecing it together and stir frying bit by bit and then taking everything and getting it into the wok at the same time at the very end. So I've got a medley of veg here. I have some carrot and some sugar snaps. Really, you can use whatever veg you want for a noodle dish like this. Everything needs to be nice and finely sort of matchsticked up if you can. You don't want to go overboard with excessive amounts of one type of veg either. It's nice to have a little bit of colour. So I've got slices, just line them up nicely to get fine matchsticks. And with this sort of lo mein dish, you do want your vegetables to sort of weave in and out of the noodles, so the finer the better. Sugar snaps, again, nice and fine strips. They're kind of rough, fine strips. My mum would probably tell me off about those. She's far more precise than I am. I'm just sort of loading up the wok clock. Hardest vegetables first. We want a bit of ginger, garlic, spring onion for base flavour of your sauce. So I've put my carrot and sugar snaps first on the wok clock because I'm going to flash fry those. I've got a load of different sort of mushrooms as well, which I'm going to flash fry, but I'm going to separate them out and then I'll start to make up my sauce after that. Your ginger wants to be nice and fine matchsticks as well. Finally, chop your garlic. Straight over the ginger. The spring onion I'm going to use for base flavour. So just nice sort of chunks of spring onion. And then just halve the white and continue with your chunks. This is a start of the sauce here on my wok clock. I've also got some washed bean sprouts, which I'm going to put in with my harder veg before the sauce. And then my mushrooms. So I've got some soaked shiitake mushrooms. These are the dehydrated type. I'm going to soak them in hot water overnight if you have that time, or a minimum of sort of a couple of hours. If you haven't got that time, you can boil your sort of dry mushrooms for about half an hour and it will get to a good enough sort of texture to be able to use. Fresh shiitake. And the difference between your fresh and dry is that obviously there's going to be more moisture in your fresh versus your dry. So your dry mushrooms will soak in more flavour, but your fresh mushrooms will add texture. And then we've got all different types here. We've got some yellow oyster mushrooms. So I'm just going to keep them. I don't really like to wash my mushrooms because, you know, unless they're ridiculously muddy. If you add too much wetness to the outside of the mushroom, then it doesn't get the same sort of crisp finish. More oyster mushrooms, large oyster mushrooms here, which I'm going to tear in. We've got enoki and shimeji mushrooms, two different types here, which you can kind of just cut the end off and just sort of sift through with your fingertips. And these guys can just pick off like this. An amazing amount of texture and sort of earthy flavour from all these different types of mushrooms. Of course, if you don't have loads of these, you can just do, you know, button mushrooms or whatever you've got available. Right, so medley of mushrooms. They're going to flash fry first, and then my veg, and then my sort of ginger, garlic, spring onion mix ready for the base of my sauce. My noodles, I've got some fresh egg noodles here. They're the ones from the pack with a little bit of oil around them, so they're quite easy to use. And then all I've got to do is slice up a bit of pork, marinate that, make a sauce, and then we'll make your lo mein, which is basically like noodles soaked in sauce. Just gonna go nice, thin, long strips. If there's sort of too much fat, just go careful on those bits. Don't want this too fatty. This pork shoulder's fine, or you can use sort of a leaner piece of like pork fillet, loin, anything like that. And then strips, nice thin strips of pork. And of course you could make this whole dish without any meat in it at all if you wish. Pork is very classic in sort of Cantonese cuisine and most Chinese cooking. So that's your pork out of the way, other than a bit of marinade. So I'm going to marinate that with a simple sort of classic Chinese marinade. A bit of light soy sauce, a bit of sesame oil, pinch of sugar, that's all it needs. Just a drizzle of that. So light soy, sesame oil, pinch of sugar. Give that a good massage, and that is ready to go. So I've got my wok clock of veg set up. My pork's been sliced and marinated. All I need to do now is make up my sauce, and then I can get wokking. Sauce, we're going to keep this really simple. A good base of oyster sauce. So I've got about a tablespoon and a half of oyster sauce there. About a tablespoon of light soy sauce. A little bit of white pepper. And then I've got some nice fresh chicken stock to top that up. And I do want this to be sort of really nice and saucy. We'll thicken that up slightly at the end with a bit of corn flour paste, a little bit of oil, and I'm going to start by stir frying my mushrooms on a super high heat. The reason why I'm starting with my mushrooms is because I want to get a sort of seal around the mushrooms, but not allow too much of the moisture to jump out of the mushrooms. So you want your wok to be really smoking hot. Swirl that around, so just cool it down slightly so it doesn't catch on fire, and then get your mushrooms in. Fold that around so you get all that sort of oil off the wok and around the mushrooms as evenly as possible. And you can hear those mushrooms almost skipping off the bottom of the wok. If you feel like you need a little bit more oil, just a little drizzle will help to sear that nicely. Now with mushrooms, I almost kind of like to give them a little bit of a burn. Let them catch a little bit before you start to turn it again. I can see that smoke. That's telling me it's starting to catch, so I then fold it through and sear it once more. I don't often add salt to my cooking, especially when I'm using soy sauce and oyster sauce and things, but with mushrooms it'll just bring out the flavour. So pinch of salt, and you can see now we're getting a nice sort of charring on some of those pieces of mushroom, which is what I'm looking for, which is why I've kept it separate to the other vegetables. And not any water at the bottom of my wok, which tells me that I've cooked that well enough and kept the moisture in the mushrooms, not allowing it to sort of seep out. Another drizzle of oil, not too much. Your harder vegetables can go in. These won't take long to cook at all. Just give them a fold through. Now with these, you don't want to really sort of burn them, so good constant movement is good. I'm going to keep the heat. They'll cook much quicker when the sauce goes in. Your bean sprouts are going in, but it won't take long to cook at all. Another little drizzle of oil. Swirl that round. When it's smoking hot, bean sprouts in. Let those sear for about 10 seconds and then fold them through. You can see how sort of crunchy those vegetables are staying. Again, the sauce is going to cook this through very quickly. So now I'm going to piece my mushrooms and vegetables together. So, nice structured stir frying here. We're going to build up your sauce now with your meat. So, last drizzle of oil. And you can see I'm adding oil as we go, but even then it's probably no more than like 2 to 3 teaspoons of oil for the whole stir fry. Pork, when it's smoking hot, into the wok. Sear that nicely. tummy in the head, tummy in the head. Push that to the back. If you feel like it's dry, you might need a little drizzle just for the ginger and spring onion to sear. When it's smoking hot, ginger, spring onion, garlic goes in. Bring the pork over the top. Keep it on a nice high heat and sear that for about 20 to 30 seconds. And then whilst this is getting really, really smoking hot, pour your sauce in. Bring that to a boil. Now lo mein, as I say, is some noodles soaked in sauce. So we want this sauce to get to a sort of nice thickness, a silkiness. But when I put the noodles in, they'll really soak that sauce up. So I'm going to go a teaspoon at a time of corn flour paste. Give it a little stir and then just check that consistency whilst it's boiling. That's 1 teaspoon. It's not quite got that silkiness that I want. So another teaspoon. So you don't want this sauce too thick or gloopy, but just this sort of silky finish. I'm allowing it to reduce a little bit more before I add the noodles. Got a good texture now to add my noodles to start to soak up that flavour. You can see how quickly the sauce soaks into the noodles. My veg are coming back into play here. And I'm not going to move that around too much now because I want the noodles to soak up all the flavour. Okay, my noodles, I don't want my noodles to stick to the bottom of my wok. So I'm going to start to serve those up. And you should be able to just lay them straight off the wok. Look at that. Just enough sauce to sort of show you that it's swimming in sauce. That's really important with a lo mein. You know, it's soaked in sauce. It's got all that flavour from everything we've cooked in the wok. But I quite like to separate those vegetables out, keep their crunch. Right. It's actually one of my favourite types of noodle. Perfect balance. It's got really good Moorish savoury flavour. And the textures from the flash frying of the vegetables, the mushrooms, love it. Reason why it's so good for me is that I'm not a big fan of those sort of crispy, almost deep fried noodles, dishes. That soaking of flavour in the noodles hits the spot. If you like this video and you want to learn more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.